Hello, everybody. I didn't actually check the camera before. Looks like I'm sitting in the right place. Good. Good. How's everybody doing today? I hope you're all right. And I hope I can click on this. There we go. We're going to finish up verbs for a while today, which is nice. And maybe get to something else. I can't remember if there was more than one section on verbs. But that'll be nice to be able to give verbs a break for a little bit. Because what we're learning is possum. And possum means I am able, I can. And as it says here, it gives a little etymology. So possum, I can, is a compound of potus, to be able, and sum, I am. I am able. Hey, imagine that. That's actually really good to know because all the forms of possum look like to be with some sort of thing on the beginning. I can and I am able take an infinitive, which makes sense. I am able to blah, 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 blah. So you'll see lots of infinitives with to be able. We're also going to learn right here the infinitive with subject accusative. What does that mean? All right, the infinitive is a verbal noun. So it's got the verbal root, it's got the verbal sense, but it's used like a noun. It completes the sense of another verb. It's the object of another verb sometimes. Used as a noun, it has the constructions of a noun. As a verb, it can govern a case and be modified by an adverb. The uses of the infinitive are much the same in Latin as in English. That's not true. At least not the way we speak English today. But okay. So we're going to learn some infinitive constructions, which is very useful. So in English, certain verbs of wishing, commanding, and forbidding are used. What? I'm going to read this and then try and make it make sense for everybody. Are used with an object clause consisting of a substantive in the objective case and an infinitive, such as he commanded the men to flee. Such object clauses are called infinitive clauses, and the substantive is said to be the subject of the infinitive. What? All right. So we have a main verb of the sentence, to command. The command takes as its object a whole phrase, not just a person. Although you can, he commanded me. But usually you command someone to do something. So you have a whole phrase that goes with the verb. And that's what the object clause is. The object clause is the direct object that's a whole clause. And it consists of a noun of some sort and an infinitive. He commanded the men to flee. All right? That's what's going to be called an indirect command because you're commanding someone, but it's not a direct command. It's not flee. It's talking about someone commanding someone to flee. Indirect command. So it's not quite the same in Latin as in English. I'm sure we're going to learn later that it's constructed just a little bit differently, but still pretty similar. All right. Similarly, in Latin, some verbs of wishing, commanding, and forbidding are used with an object clause, a clause that serves as its direct object, consisting of an infinitive, and the subject is going to be in the accusative case. So he commanded the men to flee. The men are going to be in the accusative. That makes sense because it's the direct object of command. Is viros fugere iusit, he commanded the viros, the men, to flee, fugere. I believe eubeo is the only verb of command that does not take an indirect command structure. So eubeo is the only command where you can say accusative plus infinitive as the object clause. But that might be the only one you know right now, so we don't have to worry about it. So the rule is the subject of the infinitive is the accusative, right? There's also the complementary infinitive, which is not challenging at all. It's when an infinitive is used to complete the meaning of another verb. The Romans are able to conquer the Gauls. Sorry. I've been outside, so I think my allergies are wacky. This is called the complementary infinitive, as the predicate is not complete without the added infinitive. Complementary, it completes the meaning of the main verb. So to be able needs an infinitive. It needs a complementary infinitive. Okay. Similarly, in Latin, verbs of incomplete predication, that's a term I've never heard before, are completed by the infinitive. So possum, I am able, propero or maturo, I hasten to do something, tempto, I attempt to do something. We're going to eventually learn the verb conor, to try to do something, which is much more common than attempt, to be honest. But here we go. I think my cat's freaking out. Romani Gallo superare possunt. The Romans are able to conquer the Gauls, right? So in this case, we're not doing the accusative infinitive. The Romans are able Gauls to conquer because the verb needs the infinitive for its meaning. So again, the infinitive can take both an accusative subject and an accusative object, depending on what's going on. Hey, Austin, how are you doing today? So bellum gerere maturant, they hasten to wage the war. Hey, not they hasten wage, because this verb needs an infinitive to complete its meaning. It's not setting up what's called kind of an indirect statement that has the accusative infinitive structure. Good, getting ready to head to church. Enjoy! My church is having some technical difficulties today, so our mass isn't up yet. They film it Saturday night and put it on, and it's not up yet. So, good job, tech team. I can't be mad. It's technology. It happens. Anyway, I hope you have a good mass. A predicate adjective, right? So, a predicate adjective, an adjective that describes a noun in the predicate, in the subject, sorry. An adjective that describes the subject, but is in the predicate. My cat is annoying. Annoying is a predicate adjective. Completing a complementary infinitive occurs in gender, number, and case with the subject of the main verb. So, an important distinction here. You might think that you want to put the predicate adjective in the accusative, but it's nominative because it's matching the subject. So, mali puere esse boni non possunt. Bad boys are not able to be good, boni. Right? Nominative, masculine, plural, not accusative, even though it's going with to be an infinitive. So you think, an accusative, but no, not here. It's modifying pueri. The infinitive used as a noun. Oh man, the infinitive can do anything. The English does this too, so that's not too tricky. In English, the infinitive is often used as a pure noun, as a subject of a sentence, or as a predicate nominative. For example, to conquer is pleasing, to see is to believe. So it does this in Latin. If you have to describe an infinitive, it's a neuter singular. So to conquer is pleasing, superare est curatum, videre est credere, to see is to believe. In the construction above, the infinitive often has a subject, which must then be in the accusative case. So galbam superare inimicos est curatum multis. For Galba to conquer the enemies, galbam superare inimicos, is pleasing as curatum to many, multis. So the subject really is conquering enemies. But because we're using that infinitive construction, we have the accusative subject, galbam, with the infinitive. Accusative subject with infinitive. very common. An infinitive used as a noun is neuter singular, gratum, right? Thus, in the sentence, superare est gratum, the predicate adjective gratum. I'm gonna go make sure my cat doesn't ruin the blinds. Be right back. All right, I'm back. All right. So there's some examples, but we're going to read the story about the faithless Tarpeia, which is much more exciting. All right. Sabini olum cum Romanis bellum gerebant, et multas victorias reportaverant. Iam agros proximos muris vastabant, iam obido ad propinquabant. Romani autem in Capitolium fugerant, et longe periculo aberant. Muris validis et saxis altis credebant. Frustra Sabini tela jaciebant, frustra portas duras petebant. Castellum occupare non poterant. Deinde novum concilium ceperunt. Tarpeia erat puella Romana pulcra et superba. Quotidie aquam copiis Romanis in Capitolium portabat. Non nocebant Sabini, quod ea sine armis erat neque Sabini, bellum cum feminis librisque gerebant. Tarpeia autem maxime amabat ornamenta auri. Quotidie Sabinorum ornamenta videbat, et mox ea desiderare incipiebat. Ei unus ex Sabinis dixit, duc copias Sabinas intra portas Tarpeia, et maxima erant praemia tua. ... To be continued. Wow. That was a explosion. Am I still online? Some transistor burst somewhere. So that was weird. Where'd that one go? That was really weird. And I think the bathroom light rule. Okay, but that was weird. I'm here. This plug didn't go out, so we're gonna keep streaming. That was scary. Because it's scary when transistors blow outside, like the ones on the, the power cable. All right. You want me to translate that in Latin for you? I just saw that, Austin. Okay, cool. Yes, I did start early, Roz. You haven't missed much. And now I'm really distracted, as happens. But we're okay. So we've just been looking at different ways to use infinitives. Thankfully, all of them are very similar to English so far. We're not complicating it. We're keeping it simple right now. I feel like that's originally in Latin anyway. I should be able to just find it, but maybe it's not. But let's translate this little phrase. It would be hilarious, but you never know. So Tarpeia. We're going to read about Tarpeia. And Ross, how are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. So the Sabines, as we say, the Sabines, once upon a time, Olim, that's our story word, were waging war, bellum gerebant, with the Romans. And they carried back, reportavant, many victories, multas victorias. So the Sabines are another native tribe of the middle of Italy. They're one of the early rivals of the Romans. So, doing well, hoping you're also. I am, other than being spooked. I'm fine. I have coffee, lots of coffee. It's my birthday coffee, it was free. So, yum. Now they were laying waste to the fields nearest the walls, agros proximus muris. And now they were getting close to ad propinquabat, the city, Opido. The Romans, however, fled into the Capitoline, Capitolium, and they were far away, longe, from the danger, periculo. Ablative here, the ablative of separation with ab sum. They were far away from the danger. All right, maybe I'll pull up a map of Rome later so you can see where this is. But the Capitoline is one of the 7 hills of Rome. And it's the one really right in the heart of Rome. And it had a lot of important temples on it. So the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus was on the Capitolium. And kind of right on the edge of it is where the Forum Romanum is. There's 4 all over Rome, but the main central forum was there. So anyway, they believed in credebant, their dative. You believe in your dative. So they were believing in many strong, or in the strong walls. Maurice is not many, it's walls. In their strong walls and their high rocks. And it's a pretty sheer cliff on the Capitoline sometimes, so they thought they were safe. In vain, the Sabines were tossing weapons. Yakebant, throwing weapons. Spears, presumably. And in vain, they were seeking the harsh doors. So peto means to seek, but it can also mean to kind of attack, because everything in Latin can also mean attack. Well, if you seek something, you might be there to seek it for killing it. So, all right. The castellum. I have to look up that one. I don't see that word very much. I'm guessing it's just kind of the fortress. Yeah, fortress, stronghold, fortified settlement. I like the dagger that you added to that. No, that's a different word. Castellum. So they were not able, non poterat, to occupy the stronghold, castellum. I realize now that this book didn't actually give you the forms of possum to be able. So poterat there is our imperfect. And we know because the errant is the imperfect of to be. Because again, it's just POS or POT plus a form of to be. So pot, errant, they were able. Do we have any other possums yet? No, not yet. All right. The perfect of possum is potui, Potui, and because it's Latin and everything in the perfect is regular, you just attach your regular perfect endings to it. Potui, potuiste, potuit, etc. That's a good point, Roz. Beep poop. All right. Then, Dane Day, they seized a new plan, no one concilium. Tarpeia. This is Tarpeia here. Being freaked out, she dropped her water jug. All right, Tarpeia was a Roman girl, beautiful and arrogant. Superba, that's not a good thing. You don't want to be Superba. Every day, quotidie, she was carrying water to the Roman troops on the Capitolium. The Sabines, sorry, it's pronounced Sabines usually. The Sabines did not injure her, were not injuring her. Again, you don't injure your dative, AE, because she was AE era without arms, weapons, that is. And the Sabines did not, nay, wage war, gerebant bellum, with women and children. Right? She could bring water to the troops. They didn't care. It is a universal sign for distressed maiden. You're right. I need to start carrying around more water jugs. Hey, Tarpeia, however, loved Amaba, used to love, right? Imperfect, very much, maxime, most greatly, the I want to find a different word for ornaments. Yeah, sometimes people in antiquity were decent. Sometimes they weren't. Well, how do I want it? Decorations, trappings of gold. I'm going to use trappings for ornamenta. Tarpeia, however, most greatly used to love trappings of gold. And every day she used to see, videbat, the trappings of the Sabines. And soon she began to desire them, probably. Ea being the accusative here, describing ornamenta, and not the feminine singular nominative. It could technically be either, but to me it would make more sense to have the direct object written than the subject, because we're not changing the subject. So you wouldn't need to repeat that. All right, so she began to desire them. One of the Sabines said to her, AE, so unus ex plus ablative is one of the ways, one of the ways to describe the genitive of the whole, or the partitive genitive, how many of a group. Bye, enjoy Mass. So one of the Sabines said, lead, Duke, the Sabine troops, Sabinas Copias, into the gates, O Tarpeia, and very great will be your prizes. Plural. Primia. So, what do you think she's going to do? If you could read Latin, you would know right here from this expression. But we're not going to ruin the surprise. We're going to see what happens later. Is she going to be a good Roman, or is she going to be a bad Roman? Those are the only two options for these early Roman stories. You either have to have examples of good Romans or examples of bad Romans. So, is she going to be good or is she going to be bad? All right. So now we're done with the verbs for a little while. Woo! Take a deep breath. Feels good. All right, let's take a little break to do interrogative and relative pronouns and finish the Tarpeia story. All right. Oh, he's taking it back. We're taking it back a step here. Sentences are simple, compound, or complex. Oh, sometimes you just need the big picture, okay? A simple sentence has one statement, a subject, and a predicate. Done. A compound sentence has two or more independent statements. The Romans approached the town, comma, and the enemy fled. Two totally independent statements, both with subjects, predicates. You know, you could write them as two simple sentences, but we make them a compound. Fine. See, an independent statement is one that can stand alone. It does not depend upon another statement. Okay. But then there's complex sentences. Complex has one independent and one or more dependent or subordinate clauses. So when the Romans approached the town, the enemy fled. What's the subject of the sentence? The enemy. What's the verb of the sentence? Fled. So what is when the Romans approached the town? That's a subordinate clause. And it gives the time or the circumstance for the main sentence, the enemy fled. So here, a dependent or subordinate statement is one that depends or qualifies another statement. The enemy fled is independent. When the Romans approached the town is dependent. Because if you have that when, it cannot stand on its own. When is a subordinating word. And this is one of my pet peeves when I help people with our writing. They'll put when the Romans approached the town, period. No, if it has when, it cannot stand on its own. So, the separate statements in a compound or complex are called clauses. So there's a main clause and a subordinate clause. So here's one. The Romans killed the men who were taken. So the main clause, the Romans killed the men. Subordinate, who were taken. Right? You could get rid of this part. The Romans killed the men. Still makes sense. You could not get rid of this part. Who were taken. That means nothing on its own because it's a subordinate. It needs something to hang on to. So who is a pronoun, and it sets up a relative clause. A relative clause provides more information about a noun. So the pronoun who takes the place for men, right? Who is men. It connects the subordinate with the noun men. So it's an adjective clause, it's a relative clause. But it's describing the noun, so it's an adjective clause. A pronoun that connects the adjective with the substantive is called a relative pronoun, who. And the substantive for which the relative pronoun stands is called the antecedent. So men is the antecedent, who is the relative pronoun. The relative English pronouns are who, whose, whom, which, what, that. Okay. The relative pronoun in Latin, being like an adjective, it needs to match the antecedent in gender and number. So in this case, it's going to be masculine plural. But the case of who is determined by what it's doing in the clause. So it's not going to be accusative, it's going to be nominative, because who is the subject of were taken. Do people do that in English, or is that an error in people's Latin? The when thing? Oh, people do that in English. People are really bad writers. I've read many student papers. People are bad writers. But we all know that, because we also spend time on the internet. People are bad writers there too. Exactly. Sigh. Sigh indeed. Right, Fudge? Even you know better, and you're a cat. Just kidding, you don't know English. You know some English, though. Hey, Fudge, you know your name. You know your name. Alright. So, this is what the relative pronoun looks like in Latin. qui, quai, quad, quis, 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 qui, quam, quam, quad, quo, qua, quo, qui, quai, quai, quorum, 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 quibus, 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 quos, quas, quai, quibus, quibus, quibus. All right, so let's break it down and compare it to things that we know. Qui, quai, quad. So qui looks the same in the singular and plural, so that's fun. It's not quus, Q-U-U-S, which would be nice, but it's not. Sorry, it's really irregular. Quad in the neuter, so it's kind of like some of the irregular adjectives that we learned. There was a long time ago where we learned 9 irregular adjectives that had funky genitive and dative forms, and one of them also had a UD in the neuter, nominative, and accusative. That would be alias, alia, aliud. And so this follows more similar to that structure, where it's got the D in the neuter, the IUS in the genitive, and the I in the dative. Quo vadis, indeed, whither to? The feminine singular in both is also the same, quai, quai. I'm not 100% sure why it's not qua or quos. Yeah, I'm not sure. But it's not. And then neuter, plural, being a pain in the behind, for once in its life, is an AE and not just an A. How dare you? On the upside, the neuter with an A in the plural means that it always looks like a feminine singular. And so now it's just copying what the feminine nominative singular is doing. So maybe it's the feminine's fault and not the neuter's fault this time. But there are still similarities. The M in the accusative singular, the S in the accusative plural, the long vowel in the ablative singular, the quorum, quorum, quorum in the genitive plural. I don't think we've seen the ebus ending yet, except for in a couple irregular words. Philia and dea we've seen, but those are irregular. So get more used to that. We're going to see that in the third declension nouns. That's going to be what we have. It was a little bit tricky. But as it points out, the declension of is, ea, id, there are similarities between the endings. So it's following its own little pattern, but it's not completely nonsense. So I'll take it. Sorry, my cat is hanging out with me. All right, quius, 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 qui again for these pronunciations. And how do you translate them? Not difficult. Who or that, which, what, that, of whom or whose, to, for whom, that. Kind of just depending on if it's a person or an object. We see from the table above that qui, when it refers to a person, is who or that. When it refers to an object, which, what, that. The Romans killed the men who were taken. The Romans killed the woman who was taken. So we got viros qui capti sunt, or feminam quae capta est. So again, the relative pronoun takes its gender and number from the antecedent. So this is masculine plural, this is feminine singular. But whereas the object here is accusative, the relative pronoun is going to be nominative because it's the subject of the clause that it's in, the subordinate clause that it's in. So in the first sentence, who, qui refers to the antecedent men, viros, masculine plural. The second, qui, refers to woman, feminine, feminine singular. Relative must agree in gender and number. In neither of the sentences are the antecedents and relatives in the same case, though. Whereas in feminine are accusative, qui and qui are nominative, being the subject of the subordinate clause. Agreement of the relative. Agree with antecedent in gender and number. Case is determined by its use in its own clause. Now, we're going to follow this up with the interrogative pronoun, which seems unfair, but the reason being, much like in English, they sound very similar to the relative pronoun. Who, what, whose. So we just like to learn them together because we're going to be confusing them otherwise. So, interrogative pronoun. An interrogative pronoun is a pronoun that asks a question. In English, the interrogatives are who, which, what. In Latin, the pronoun is quis and quid, and the adjective is qui, qui, quod. So the interrogative adjective looks exactly the same as the relative pronoun. Now, when would you use an adjective over a pronoun? So an adjective, an interrogative adjective, you know something about what you're talking about. So if you are looking at a book and you say, what book is that? You know, you can see there's a book there, but you can't see the title. So you're just asking, what book is that? Oh, it's the Aeneid, right? But if you had never seen a book before, because you're a Roman and you're only used to scrolls, you would say, what is that? You don't even know how to describe what you're looking at. What is it? So we'd use quid est, what is it, instead of qui liber est, what book is that? The adjectives, again, look exactly the same as the relative pronouns because you need all the forms. For the interrogative, there's some fewer forms, quis quid, as you see right there. All right, so who is the man? Quis est vir? What man is leading them? Qui vir eos ducet. In A, who is the interrogative pronoun? In B, what is an interrogative adjective? Quis quid is the pronoun, qui qui quod is the adjective. The interrogative adjective, qui qui quod, is declined just like the relative pronoun. The interrogative pronoun, quis quid, is declined like qui qui quod in the plural, but in the singular, there's only the masculine, feminine, and neuter forms. Quis quid, cuius cuius, qui qui, quem quid, quo quo. So there's no separate feminine form. But in the plural, it's the same. So in the plural, everything's the same. This is not confusing at all. It is confusing, but it's less confusing than it seems. You know, how are you going to tell if you're looking at a relative pronoun or an interrogative pronoun? Well, a relative pronoun is going to be introducing its own verb in a subordinate clause. There's going to be a main verb. The interrogative pronoun is probably going to be introducing the sentence, and is probably going to be a question. And most of the forms do look the same, which means you really don't have to memorize that much more. You just have to memorize the interrogative pronoun singular, which is different in 4 forms. And again, that's just for introducing a question. Observe that the masculine and feminine are all alike, and that all the forms are like the corresponding forms of the relative, excepting quis and quid. Okay? You have to know two different things for the interrogative, and that's why we teach them together. Look, here's some ancient Germans, apparently. But we're going to finish with our Tarpeia story. Quis est... well, let's do a few small examples of questions just so people understand them. So, quis est ager? Who is sick? Interrogative pronoun. Servus quem amo est ager. The servant whom I love is sick. So, quem, the relative pronoun, answers the question of the interrogative. It has its own verb, amo. In terms of sentence structure, it's very common for the relative pronoun to set up the clause and the verb to end the clause, and you'll have any other word in between those two. So, cuius scutum habes? Whose shield do you have? Scutum habeo quod legatus ad castellum misit. I have the shield which the legate sent to the camp. Qui legatus suum scutum dabit. To whom the legate will the legate give, future, dabit. To whom will the legate give his own shield? Filio meo scutum dabit. He will give the shield to my son. Okay. Not hard, really. In context, it generally is pretty easy. So let's figure out what Tarpeia decided to do, and then we can end. Tarpeia, commota ornamentis sabinorum pulchris, diu resistere non potuit, et respondit, date mihi ornamenta quae in sinistra brachiis geritis, et celeriter copias vestras in Capitolium ducam. Nec Sabini recusaverunt, sed per duras magnas quae castelli portas properaverunt, quo Tarpeia duxit, et mox intra validos et altos muros stabant. Tum, sine mora in Tarpeiam, scuta graviter iecerunt, nam scuta quoque in sinistris brachiis gerebant. Ita, perfida puella Tarpeia interfecta est, ita Sabini Capitolium occupaverunt. So Tarpeia, moved by the trappings, the beautiful trappings, pulchris ornamentis, of the Sabines, for a long time was not able, it would make more sense in English to say, was not able to resist for long, and responded, give to me the trappings which you carry, gerdetis, on your left arms, and I will lead your troops swiftly into the Capitolium. Nor did the Sabines refuse, but they hastened through the sturdy and large doors of the camp, whither Tarpeia led, and soon were standing inside the strong and lofty walls. Then, without delay, they tossed their shields on top of Tarpeia heavily, severely. She got buried alive by shields. For also, they were carrying shields on their left arms. Thus, the traitor lady Tarpeia was killed. Thus, the Sabines occupied the Capitolium. So she had wanted the kind of Gallic golden wrist bands that they wore on their left arms, and she got He got buried alive by shields instead. Was not what she wanted. But that's what traitors deserve. So say the Romans and the Gauls and everybody else. So she really shouldn't be surprised. There are other versions of the story, some that make her more or less innocent. One, I think she commits suicide, jumping off the cliff. There's a lot of variation on this because there is a rock, kind of a outcropping on the Capitoline, which is called the Tarpeian Rock, where something happened. So in this version, it's where she got buried alive by the shields. So a very safe way to die, indeed. All right. So we finished up verbs for a while, and we got started with some relative pronouns and interrogative pronouns, so we can start forming some really complex sentences. It's awesome. So we're going to take a break from that and get to more nouns this time. So different declensions. We're going to finish up all our nouns. So that'll be a fun break. Again, if you're watching this at home to really seriously tackle Latin, spend the time memorizing the forms like the back of your hand. Just one thing per week is really doable. But for now, we're gonna wrap. I hope everybody. What was that rock used for executions? I don't think generally. No. Because they weren't. Hmm. Hmm. I want to say that there are like some examples, but usually no. Tarpeian. Da-da-da. No, you're right. Yeah, it was used during the Roman Republic as an execution site. All right. Murderers, traitors, perjurers, and slaves convicted by the quaestores Parricidii were flung from the cliffs, 80 feet high. But that, let's see, when was that used? Da-da-da. The rock survived the remodeling used for execution in its oldest time, the 1st century BC. But there was one as late as the time of Vespasian. But it's not the standard method as it says here. The standard method of execution in ancient Rome was strangulation in the Tullianum, which is like a kind of prison thing. So not the most common. As mentioned, asterisks as a way some prisoners would die. Oh, interesting. That's hilarious. Is it? It is. Look at it there. So it's not super common. Yeah, that's where I was looking to. Hey, Alice, I'm just wrapping up here. We're talking about execution, so that's fun. So it's not the most common form of execution to be thrown from the Tarpeian Rock, but yeah, you're right. And it did jingle in the back of my head. Yeah, I feel like it's just kind of too bloody for most cases, which I know it sounds weird to say that about the Romans, something being too bloody. What I mean is killing of a citizen is very different from killing other people. There's a certain sort of standard for killing citizens. So yeah, it just you still get killed, but there's you gotta have a little bit of respect. Which is why St. Paul got to get shoved all the way over to Rome before he was killed, because he was a citizen. So he just deserved a little bit of somebody listening to him. Exactly. We're gonna kill you with respect, because we're doing it for Rome, and you get that because you're a citizen. Romans. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Don't spend too much of it thinking about execution. I don't know what I'm gonna get up to with my day. Kind of looking at some dust bunnies on the floor, thinking I might need to do some cleaning, and check to see if parts of my house don't have power, because that was loud. Hopefully nothing's on fire. I'm not selling anything though, so that's good. All right. Bye, everybody.